Are we ready to begin? Are we ready to resume? Friends, thank you for your patience with this very intense discussion of the critical issue of membership. I appreciate that. We've had an intense discussion of a big topic. I'm going to suggest, if I can have everyone's attention, I'm going to suggest that we now do several items which I think we can do reasonably expeditiously, although I know I'm asking for trouble by saying that at the outset. So we'll deal with the Treasurer's report, communication with partners in association management, a new chair for the Financial Soundness Committee, and then maybe I'll skip 7 and go to number 8, and we'll get that done, and then we'll do as much program reports as we can before dinner and resume after dinner.
Mr. Matheson, could we have your attention, please?
Jack, we're trying to do business, so be good. Thank you. Okay, so
Do you ever have a position or a section for just random comments from the various members here?
we can do that also. We will have that. Shall we do that before we close the meeting?
I would like to do that.
Yes.
Virginia's got a couple of issues that we're working on that I think could stand national attention.
Very good. We will hear from Virginia and from anyone else before the close of the meeting. Is there any other agenda? I didn't ask at the beginning. It's good if the presiding person knows what's coming down the pike so we can judge the time a little bit. Are there any other topics that people want? Jack?
I'd like to suggest the officers appoint a development committee to further explore what the potential is for raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for NaCCRA.
Okay, we'll put that on the agenda as well.
I would like to have a brief discussion on the feasibility of insuring a residence investment in the CCRC. So, like a federal deposit, if you put money in the bank, if the bank fails, you are insured.
Well, this is kind of what the model laws is all about, isn't it?
Yeah, we have a model law that does exactly that.
Okay.
Okay. So, but we'll
Okay.
touch on it.
Okay.
Right.
Did you just say something that I misinterpreted, that you want to get an insurance policy that you can protect your investment in the...
Yeah, it's not an insurable risk. We have a model law proposal that would provide the same level of security to CCRC residents as insurance policyholders now have in their insurance policies.
Would an insurance underwriter accept
No,
the risk?
the answer is no.
Okay. So shall we turn to the report from the treasurer?
Right.
You all have received this report in advance of the meeting, and the floor is now open for comments. We don't have to approve this report, but we have to receive it.
I'll move receiving it. I think we have to observe that we're spending more than our resources.
Correct.
And I don't see any indication, there's no written report here
Right.
for how long we can continue before we would be insolvent. We did have a discussion of that when Mr. Walton was still the treasurer, and action was taken, but it looks like we're still outspending our resources. So that's something that I think the board, as a fiduciary, has to be concerned with.
Yes. Perhaps we can schedule ourselves to have an in-depth discussion with the treasurer at our next teleconference meeting.
Whenever he's available.
Okay.
I don't know that we can continue to kick that can down the road.
Yeah.
Well, sure. You want to have a discussion now?
I mean, we're not going to gather together very often.
Right.
We're here.
Right.
I think those are the kinds of discussions that we ought to have.
Terrific. You have the floor.
Well, the basic question is membership, and membership brings in money. Unless you're going to find a philanthropy that wants to contribute to us, or a philanthropist, then membership is the only way we have.
I might mention that John Dulcimer has been mentioned earlier, has developed a grant proposal for foundations. He only did that maybe 4 weeks ago, so it's too soon to have produced any result. I am using the President's letter in the forthcoming issue of Lifeline to appeal for funds from the readers. And we'll see if that produces any result. It may not, but I will try. Jack?
There are two approaches to balancing a budget. You can live within your income, or you can increase your income. And so the proposal is to increase the income. Now, for at least 2 years, and partially into a third year, I balanced the budget here, personally. And I stopped doing it because I saw no evidence that steps were being taken to bring things into a self-sustaining basis. The bulk of our expenditure, aside, there's the Lifeline, which I think we would all agree is essential. We spend a great deal for partners in association management, not as much as they think they might need, but we still spend money there, and on officer travel. And so the investment in partners was originally predicated on the idea that that investment was going to grow the membership the way partners had grown the membership in NaCCRA to bring us into balance. And at some point, I guess we have that as an agenda item. But I can say, as a person who did donate, that I think before you can go out and expect to receive grants, people are going to want to know that there's a value proposition, that they're not just investing money in having people fly around the country or having no action. So that becomes a challenge. And at this point, my wife and I, we support a great many philanthropic options, but we're no longer contributing here. If you can't persuade a board member to contribute, how are you going to persuade granting institutions to do so?
Every board I've been on, one of the requirements is a contribution.
Absolutely.
And I think one of the ways that we can consider that is trimming back the bill that we send in as board members. I don't know that, I think it'd be great if you want to pay my hotel bill, but I didn't come down here with that understanding or that belief. I expect to do it myself.
Yes, Marley?
I think a realistic way is to not exceed our income, not reduce our expenditures. It used to be that when we came to this meeting, there was only enough reimbursement for the NaCCRA meeting. It had nothing to do with staying for leading age. That was, we couldn't afford that, and I don't think we can afford it now. But there are people who do not claim reimbursement for their travel in officers, and that helps, I think, considerably. But not everybody is in a position to do that. But we can, on the other hand, we can limit the amount that we reimburse.
And I think you have to recognize that, I agree that you have to look at tightening up on expenses. But I've shouted out some residents in the community about becoming involved with NaCCRA. And one of the concerns is their out-of-pocket expenses. They just feel that they can't afford to undertake in that and to fund that cost entirely out of their own pocket.
I think Joe's point raises the question, do we have enough impetus to afford to continue as an organization? Because if the minimum price of service is more than what we're able to generate, then there's simply not sufficient interest to warrant the organization. And I believe we need these things. Whether they can be achieved by other means or not, I don't know. But I think the real question that's going to come up at some point, and that our treasurer really needs to address because he's the chief financial officer, is how long can we afford to continue as an organization, and what is the outlook, and is there anything that we can do to ensure our survival? We don't want to just drift along like Sears Methodist did and then one day say, surprise!
Why are you pointing at me? I didn't do that. Hey, can I just ask one tiny question? Sure. This may not be in my business, but that's very interesting what you said about the money and the concept of whether we're paying more to run an organization that costs more than what we spend. I mean, I think I've got that right. But anyway, can I ask what the annual budget is for NaCCRA, for this group here? Is it, can it just a one number? Do you know what it is? I don't have that full. I mean, it may be private, I don't know what.
No, it's not private. It's, this is, our budget and our expenditures should be utterly public as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, okay, what is it?
Well, someone,
Is it, I mean, is it $1,000?
it's less than 500, it's less than 50,000 a year, something like 30.
Okay.
No, it's $28,174.
Okay.
And the actual, the year-to-date, well, oh, wait, that's the year-to-date, let's see. The yearly budget is $46,350, excuse me.
Okay, well, I just
And,
wanted
so year-to-date, the budget was $28,174, and the revenue is $22,921.
Well, the reason I asked that, it's really, like I said, it's probably not my business, the details and so forth, but if you spent your $46,260.77, if you spent it well, and you actually captured the ears and eyes of the 650,000 people, Jack, you said something a little earlier that was really my question. It's the only thing I've gotten in the meeting so far. You said something about if we had them there, we need to tell them about contracts or something that you wanted to accomplish for all those members. Can you give me the elevator version, if you will, and we've only got 7 flights, the elevator version of what if you had the 650,000 people hanging on your every word, elevator version, what, is this what NaCCRA wants to do, to say to them something?
Well, do you want my answer or the organization's answer? My answer would be, number one, bankruptcy protection, just like you have when you make a bank deposit. Number two would be contracts that you can understand.
Yeah.
And number three would be financial management that ensures that promises made will be promises kept. Those three things do not now exist in the CCRC industry. That would be my elevator speech. NaCCRA's voice is to promote the continuing care lifestyle.
That's the mission statement in the bylaws.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, Dan, you told me the mission statement was there, but I just want to be sure that I want to be right up where you are today. And hope you all will not take your shoes off and throw them at me if I say this, but I haven't heard any mention so far about getting that message to the 650,000 people by way of the internet. Okay, nobody's throwing their shoes, good. There is a way to communicate with somewhere around, I don't know, about 90 million people, sort of, in the States by way of the internet. And I just had this vision of seeing someone like Jack or yourself or someone else saying those things that you wanted to say to the 650,000 people on an internet broadcast, such as you might see on YouTube or Facebook or something like that. You can do this all for about $160 rather than the $46,000. To speak clearly to those people who reside in CCRCs and to the people that you may say, well, people in the CCRCs are a little bit lower and they don't care for the internet and all that. But what you really want to speak to is the family members who are younger, who might be interested in those contracts and what they mean, whereas the moms and dads, you know, are like, hey, my son or daughter, if they take care of this, I don't know what that's all about. We've seen that happen. The internet could be very, very powerful.
So let me
That's all.
just
That's all.
respond quickly. We have on our website NaCCRA in under 2 minutes. That's your elevator speech. So it's there, and it pretty much says what I said, rather than this bland mission statement that
Don't point at me, I wasn't here
got.
with the mission
Oh, I
statement.
didn't mean to, well, you're the representative. Okay, we have a bland mission statement that was adopted in Boulder. So that's there. Marlene has a Facebook page, which has, I think, something like 48 followers. Not very many. And this week, when we put out a broadside to just the board, saying, check into Facebook, because that's where we post the updates to NaCCRA U, we got responses back saying, I would never have anything to do with Facebook, from at least 2 or 3 people.
Sure.
They
I
think
understand
it's,
that. I do.
so,
To the next generation, and that's what he's
yeah.
talking
But the next
But we
generation-
do have,
The millennials are after that Facebook.
Thank you very much. It
Yeah.
is the next generation,
It is.
oftentimes who will be in CCRCs or who are handling
Yeah.
the contracts.
now we do have Liz Tidyman in the state of Washington. Gosh, we're losing a lot of people. Bob Nicholson used to be in this meeting. But anyway, I was pointing toward Bob Nicholson's chair. But anyway, we have Liz Tidyman. She's very effective with the state of Washington legislature. She goes to the legislature, she speaks, they listen. But she's not eligible to be involved in NaCCRA governance because she's not a resident of CCRC. Her parents are residents. That's an issue that was discussed at great length in our board, and the board decided to stay with the resident-only thing, and that's something that we may want to consider. So the structure that's there now is what the board has put in place. We can change it, but it's what the board has put in place.
Jack, let me ask this question. I appreciate your raising this. In a sense, it's the electronic version or the cyberspace version of the direct mail issue that I raised. The question is, would you be prepared to present us with a program that would cost $160, which would enable us to reach?
Did I say 160?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I meant 175.
Okay,
Sorry.
we'll accept that. You know, in other words, could
I
you?
can give you some guidelines. I'm not a master of internet marketing, but I've seen it done and I know who to ask. I do not know, but I know who to ask that
Okay.
question. And as far as using the internet for your contributions and stuff,
Right.
I see, Jack, you're so good with the internet, you know what I'm talking about, and maybe some of the rest of you are. I see a person speaking on YouTube, not necessarily Facebook. We'll put Facebook on the shelf for the moment, because it's controversial. But a video, either on your website, but on social media. Social media is better than your own personal website, because they may not come to your website, but you start with YouTube. Let's just start with YouTube. I see an ad on your video, and you get someone to buy that little crawl or a little quick break, or in some way, like broadcasting, a little ad, and they will pay for it in advance, and therefore you kind of know where your money is.
Well, I should tell you that all the videos that are on our website are on YouTube, because that's how we put them on our website. We just embed from YouTube, but you can go directly to them on YouTube. However, for those of you who don't know Jack Shell, I want to just tell you something about him, since he's making this wonderful contribution, which is, he's the voice of Dallas. He was a disc jockey for many years on the radio in Dallas, and he knows how to get a following, and he knows how to have listeners or he would not have had the wonderful career that he has.
What we
And
did-
we're
Shut
very
up.
fortunate to have you here. We're very fortunate that you're here.
It's too late, I'm retired. Anyway,
You're not allowed to retire. We all try retiring and then we get bored and we say,
look,
to hell with that.
I'm not, Jack, I'm not trying to take over the meeting, but I just had these notes here. What I'm hearing, there's so much talk about mailmen and zip codes and all that. I'm thinking, that's expensive, and you're a group that doesn't have millions of dollars, and you're looking for a kind of a grassroots reach of people. And I just saw Shark Tank last night, and there was a little company on there that started with like $1,200 of revenue, and they went to 9 million by using the internet. Now, this is not the same thing here, but it just makes you think about how the internet is pretty doggone important. And if you want to throw it away, fine, and not go to it, cool. But get together and talk about it and see if a concerted, not a little bit of this and a little bit of that, a little bit, but something that's organized, and you say, this is what we want to do, and you all kind of agree on that, and you get your $175 together, and then you go forward.
Well,
Dan, I will give you the answer to your question.
Good. So, and the other Jack Cumming, is a good in-house expert on the internet as well. So we'll try to have a dialogue so that we can pursue this idea. And I thank you for bringing it up. That's really great.
Yeah, and I'll just add that we had an outreach to us by LifeSite Logics, which is a pretty compelling business that wanted to invest and work with us on that, but it just didn't resonate with the board for whatever reason. And so some of these things I pursue independently of NaCCRA on my own, and there may be a different path than through NaCCRA to get to what you're talking about.
Okay, did you say that we're going to chat about this at some point, or what?
Well, if you don't mind consulting your consultant, consulting your contact, and then getting back to me, and I'll put it on a board agenda for a future time, and maybe invite you as a guest to participate in the board meeting.
That would be next year, wouldn't it?
No, I mean, we have teleconference meetings every month, so it
Okay,
would
well,
probably be a
I'll just shoot
teleconference
that
meeting.
directly to you
Right.
after fussing with Jack, and I'll
Right.
shoot that straight to you.
That'd be great.
Okay.
That'd be terrific. Okay, so all this has been part of the treasurer's report, so to speak. I think that, do I understand correctly that we see that we are spending more money than we're taking in? We understand that there are two fundraising initiatives, which is a way of expanding the available money, but we don't know what they're going to produce. One is a foundation initiative undertaken by John Dulcimer. The other is my implementation of this board's decision that we should focus on the contribution angle as opposed to the dues angle. And so I've used the President's letter in the next issue of Lifeline to try to raise money that way. And we have no idea what result that will produce. And then, of course, we've also mentioned the importance of trimming down our expenses as much as is possible. Is there anything else that needs to be said about the treasurer's report? Yes, Joe.
And again, I think Peter makes a good point. There is a sense of urgency here. We need to act now to start reining in these expenses. And principally, the area where they come, over a 32-month period, in 2011 and 2013, about 25% of all the money we spent was on officer travel. And 40% was administrative support, 17% printing. Those are the big items. And we can't afford to cut back on printing. Lifeline is our ace in the hole. Administratively, maybe we have to rethink about how much we contract out by and how much we move back in-house. When I became treasurer at that time, it was all done by a volunteer, at least the writing the checks. We had a person that collected the money, but then we consolidated and saved some money, and we vastly improved experience. But we do need to take a look immediately on administrative costs and travel.
You know, I can tell you that we had a similar situation. We're not quite as bad as yours, because North Carolina. We decided we had to balance the budget. We prepared a budget, among other things, although on our bylaws, it still authorizes travel expenses for officers to certain meetings. We've asked all the officers to volunteer their travel expenses and not seek reimbursement. We reduced the number of our hotlines, which is our newsletter, each year, and we had a paid editor, and we decided that we couldn't afford a paid editor anymore, so we got a volunteer editor to do that. We're not quite out of the woods yet, although we've managed to maintain a balance now for about 18 months. But our big effort is going to be growth to relieve all that issue and get back to where we were. We can afford the things that we really want to do.
Beth?
Can I interrupt to give
May I
you the
suggest-
this report?
I recognize Beth and then
This is
I'll-
going to be very short. May I suggest we stop talking about money and start talking about what we as an organization are doing and want to do that will make people want to be part of us? Because that's the question we get when we try to talk people into belonging. And the things like the standard laws and so forth, and the Bill of Rights and those things.
So that emphasizes the importance of our program discussion, which is coming up. Thank you, Beth. Yes, Bob?
There, and boy, I don't want the record to show that I interrupt Beth to hide. So the answer is the Farmer's Restaurant is booked tonight. It's out. The two choices are these. A half a block shorter is an Italian restaurant called the Solomio, and is fairly reasonably priced, like 24 entrees. But the Sunset High School graduate from Dallas, Texas made the best suggestion, and that is the sports bar in the hotel. And I've examined the menu and talked to Tyler, the manager, who says we can accommodate you. It would be in the neighborhood of 18 to 21 people. If he goes over that, he's got 2 big tables, and we don't all have to hold hands at the same time.
Great.
And he said it would be better to shoot for 5:45 than 6.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll end the meeting at 5:40.
Thank you, Bob.
And I will go, and it's also entitled Tennessee Whiskey Sippin'. I will go down a little early and check that dimension out.
Okay, and I will move that we receive the treasurer's report.
Can we go together?
Is that, can you second that, Bob?
Can I second what?
The motion I just made.
On Tennessee Sippin' Whiskey?
No, I move that we accept the treasurer's report.
Oh, I second. Yeah, I did.
Thank you.
You've got to give me stronger signals.
Is there anyone, is there any discussion, further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Good, thank you.
Could I just make one statement? We ran a lot of material to send for everybody to distribute here. I just need to pat my Stone Ridge on the back because they ran 750 copies of many articles. They paid for the postage to mail it here, and I just want to thank them and on behalf and make it official to you all that there was their contribution, and he said it's very well.
And that's the generosity of a for-profit provider.
Exactly.
That's right. I'd like to move that we ask the secretary to write one of his typically glowing letters of thanks to the executive director of Stone Ridge on all our behalf.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And I thank you so much, and it was really a phenomenal contribution.
Good, thank you.
And as the one who unpacked the box, it is really phenomenal.
Great. Thank you.
And it cost us not one nickel.
Communication with partners in association management. Now, there are two, I just want to explain, there is underway by the officers a review of our total relationship with Partners in Association Management. So this is not trying to address that, and I don't think we're prepared to address that at this meeting. But there is a more limited thing, which is the immediate communication with Partners in Association Management. There's a draft proposed motion on the agenda. I wonder if anyone wants to propose it, and we can accept it and move on, or if there's any discussion.
I'll propose it.
Is there a second?
Second.
I'll second it. It's a good motion.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Any opposed? Okay, so the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. We're really cooking with gas here. Okay. The new chair of the Financial Soundness Committee, John Delsmer, has been serving as chair of the Financial Soundness Committee, but has felt overwhelmed. He has a lot of responsibilities raising funds for a new health center at his own CCRC. He's serving as our treasurer. He also has a health problem with his hip, which needs to be reconfigured in some way. So John has resigned as chairman of the Financial Soundness Committee. I have reached out, as the bylaws permit me to do, to Gerard Highland to chair this committee. Now, I only know Gerard Highland through email correspondence with him. I will meet him next month when I am on the West Coast speaking. However, I offer this name with great confidence on the basis of this email correspondence. He is very, very thoughtful, very thorough, very committed. He was invited wants to be a member of this board, but declined because he cannot travel. But he's a very able person.
If we had somebody on the board that had a close relationship with him, that person could be called upon to speak to the motion.
Well, I would like to speak to the motion and say that while I was chair of this committee, he was one of the people that was most prolific and helpful in many, many ways in getting that committee going, and our understanding of the problems and situations throughout the country with respect to CCRCs that were in difficulty. He's a tremendous asset. He was a tremendous asset to me as when I was chair. He's got a series of connections. I don't know where he gets all the information he gets, but he has connections that get him information that I was unable to find myself, and I found extremely valuable. And so I would highly recommend it.
Are you moving this motion?
I will move this motion.
Not until I speak,
Okay, Bob, you must...
because he is the one that has worked with me in traveling to 12 CCRCs in the Willamette Valley, followed up, got them organized, and just in the last 3 weeks, talked to his executive director of Mary's Woods, a wholly named CCRC, when he learned that Dan was coming to Seattle and said, we want to bring him here. And he went into the executive director and said, Dan Seeger is coming. And he said, that's wonderful. We want to host the resident leaders from the 10 CCRCs at our expense. We want to help with Dan's travel expense. I want to become a life member, and we hope he'll be, that this ED will be at the NaCCRA meeting in the morning. And that's all because of Gerard's continual, I shouldn't say harassing, but nurturing, prodding, informing this executive director. So his head is on straight and his heart is big.
You need 20 more people like that.
That's right.
That's right.
He is outstanding.
Okay, we have a motion, and do we have a...
Oh,
do
but
we
I
have a
was the second. I
Do we
count
have
that as a second.
He knows it.
What?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, so there's a second. All in, assuming there's no more discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, the motion is accepted unanimously. So following my plan, we're now going to look at this question of agenda item number 8, observation status versus inpatient status when entering a hospital. We've heard about this discussion earlier. It's a little hard to relate this to our mission statement, and yet it's of concern to our constituents. Marlene, did you have a comment?
Well, we haven't done all the program reports which came before.
I skipped number 7, thinking that it was big, and I was trying to get rid of the
All right.
quick items. So
I'm sorry, I didn't know.
that's all right. I tried to. So, but we'll definitely. I'm regarding number 7 as a heavy duty agenda item, and I'm trying to sort of do the housekeeping items now. So, so friends, can we look at this? There is a draft motion from the officers, which proposes that we work with the leading age legislative branch on this. It's not directly connected with our mission statement, but it's an issue that's of great concern to many of our members. Does everyone know what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay. It's the observation status issue when people are admitted to the hospital.
I think your analysis of it here is excellent. I think the proposal is fine. I would just amend it slightly to say that you can work with Larry Minnick's leading age legislature and any other organization supportive of the proposal. And with that, I would move the motion. But it looks like Marlene wants to discuss it.
It's not a discussion, I think it's correct.
Oh, yes.
I think the requirement is a 3-night stay, not a 3-day stay.
Yes, it's exactly, midnight to midnight to midnight.
Exactly.
Oh, okay.
Make a 3-night stay.
3
It has
nights.
to be, yeah, midnight to midnight to midnight.
Are you seconding the
No,
motion?
I'm trying to get it corrected before it gets too far down the pike.
That's a very
Okay.
good idea.
So can we say that with the amendment, it's been moved? Now, is there a second? Or
Okay, wait a second. The amendment has been redrafted to say a 3-night stay, and it's also been amended to add,
You can't do just 3-night stay. It's got to be from midnight to midnight to midnight.
so how do we describe that?
3, but it has to be entire days. So and they kept emphasizing at a meeting I was at last week, midnight to midnight.
You
to
have
midnight.
three consecutive midnights that
That's
applies.
Exactly.
Okay, should,
It's,
As the-
this is a major issue in Connecticut
It is.
among contractors.
Okay.
And now in Connecticut, the hospitals are required to provide the patient with a written notice that it is an observation, not a stay.
So they have no,
They-
then they have no recourse when they're charged.
It's a- And my understanding is that attempts are being made at the federal level to repeal all of this, because it's a hospital's way of avoiding penalties for readmission.
okay. So the motion now is amended to say a 3
Consecutive midnight.
consecutive midnight stay. Instead of a 3-day stay, it's a 3 consecutive midnight stay. And then added to Larry Minnick's and the leading age staff is, and any other organization supportive of the proposal. Okay?
And it's, if I could just add, it's very crucial because if somebody comes back to your nursing unit and they have not had those 3 consecutive midnights, then their 80-day or 100 days that are for the Medicare coverage and the skilled nursing doesn't count.
Right.
Yeah, he's got that in the discussion here.
Yeah.
That's in the discussion
That's
in the
in the
agenda.
discussion.
But it was absolutely crucial that we do this.
So I believe we have a motion and a second, am I correct?
Second.
Okay, Marlene seconds the motion, and everyone in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that carries, fine. Thank you very much, this has been very helpful. Now we have 2 items left on our agenda.
Excuse me, do you have a particular people who are going to be working on that?
Well, it says the president, I don't know if the president's going to have a lot of time to work on this, but anyway. I'd be glad to pass the job to someone else to explore with Mary next. Okay, why don't we do this? In terms of implementation, I will take the initiative with leading age, since I'm trying to cultivate, it's kind of a thing with leading age. leading up to peak in the spring. So I'll do the leading age part, but then I'll reach out to board members to do the rest. Is that okay? Yes, sir?
Sounds good.
Okay. Now, we have two substantive items to do. We have roughly 20 minutes to begin one of them, and then we have the evening session. We may not need more than an hour after supper, but we have the evening to finish up. You've all been very patient. I think it's been a very constructive discussion. I'm very grateful to all of you. So let's now turn to program reports. And of course, the whole point of the reports is not just to hear reports, but also to see if we have ideas for propelling things forward. The program reports are Bill of Rights, Model Laws, Lifeline, NaCCRA University website, and possible future programs. Is it all right if we proceed in that order? Is it, it doesn't have any particular order?
I've got 3 to add at the possible, at the end.
Okay, 3 program proposals.
Yes.
Excellent, that would be great. On the Bill of Rights, as I explained earlier, the progress has been a little bit slow on account of the limitations of my own time and energy, and I maybe should be recruiting some more help. There is a Bill of Rights committee, and I could probably make better use of them. Let me say this. In my effort to reach out and draw non-members into a Bill of Rights project, I succeeded in getting a lot of interest among members. So although my original idea was this would be a reach out to non-members to get them interested in NaCCRA, the effect has been that I've stirred up a lot of members who are very, very interested in this project, and that's good news, so that our members are being reinforced that we're doing something useful. So I've gotten a lot of I got a lot of requests for the discussion kit. I sent them out, and I'm now getting more feedback than I can quite absorb, so I'm going to have to get myself, freed up enough to get this feedback organized enough to share with my subcommittee so that we can then assimilate this feedback and come up with a new Bill of Rights project, a new Bill of Rights formulation, which we can present to this board for its approval and then to promulgate as a model or as a list of best practices or as further discussion. Most of the feedback I've gotten has been very enthusiastic. Most people think this is a right-on issue to be dealing with. Of course, those are the people who have responded, so they're interested naturally. The only thing that I've sensed is, you might say, it's going to require threshing because there are different slants on it, is the issue of residents appointing members of governing boards. And there are a few people, a minority, but nevertheless a few people who seem, and I hope I'm not overinterpreting this, who seem to trust managements more than they do their fellow residents, and who are a little bit wary of any procedure where residents would elect or appoint 2 or 3 members of the governing board of the institution. Most people, however, seem to be veering in the direction of feeling that the residents are financial investors and owners in an ethical sense, if not in a legal sense, of the institution, especially the not-for-profit ones, and they're anxious to see some meaningful resident input to the board, the governing board's decision-making process. Everything else that sort of is in the Bill of Rights seems fairly non-controversial. I haven't picked up any threads of controversy about the other things. There are a number of proposals that have come back which recommend streamlining the text. Would like to see a more concise text, and I have a few actual drafts of more concise versions which the subcommittee will be able to consider. So briefly, that's what I can report on the Bill of Rights project. I'd be glad to answer any questions before we move on to the next thing.
Clarify for me, Dan, what the deliverables are with respect to NaCCRA's support. a community writes you and says, yeah, we ought to have a Bill of Rights, and you're going to help us.
Right.
What are the deliverables that you are prepared to deliver to
Well, I can
help
tell-
them get a Bill of Rights?
I can tell you what's happened so far. A lot of people have felt that the process has been clarifying to their own minds in terms of their thinking of the quality of life in their own institutions. And in fact, some of the feedback I've gotten are rewritten bills of rights from which they used our draft as a springboard and made a specific bill of rights for their specific institution. So that's a deliverable. I mean, they've gotten something out of it. I don't know what more I can say about it. In a sense, the delivery is still ahead. If we get a Bill of Rights which is well formulated and very compelling, presumably it will be helpful to people around the country in terms of advocating for themselves and their rights in their particular institutions. Some states may want to have bills of rights legislated into law. May not be right for every state. Connecticut has done this. Some may want to borrow some of our proposals, may not want to borrow all of them. That would be a deliverable if they borrow one or two of them. So I think this program, the only thing I regret really is that the model laws has not generated the same kind of ferment, because I think the model laws are really more important than the Bill of Rights, but they're hard for people to understand, whereas people can understand the Bill of Rights and they can understand what they're dealing with. The model laws seem a little esoteric to people because they're technical, you know. So I think that I don't have any problem about deliverable. I mean, I think this is going to be useful in the long run.
Just briefly, I participated in a meeting as an auditor on Friday with the advisory committee to the commissioner for the Department of Social Services. In Connecticut, they oversee CCRCs. And that advisory committee consists of representatives from the community, providers, actuaries, auditors. You have a cross-section there. Residents, their voices is represented. And that discussion went on for 3 hours, and it was fascinating how much is in that Bill of Rights, which has been, with the assistance of a legal firm, converted to legal language. And it was impressive on how much of what's in that proposal prompts both sides to stop and think and wonder, maybe we will regret if we get all of this. An example of that is a provision in the proposed Bill of Rights in Connecticut that would restrict the CCRC. Any monies that is invested in that community stays in that community.
Right.
And there's a feeling among residents that they want to leave that there. But that cuts both ways. If you live in a community that has financial problems, that's affiliated with another community across the state that is ample resources, there's protection there. And I thought that entire discussion, and included in that was the right to have a residents represented on the board. And one of the providers is a family-owned business. And the question is, are you going to insist that a family-owned business put residents on the board? And are you going to give them rights? And what I drew from that meeting is that how much information is available in that setting, and perhaps other settings in other states where this is occurring, that would be very beneficial to those that are just starting on this. It's tremendously complex and difficult, and the more you get into that, the more you learn. that it is. Yeah.
And this is one of the things that NaCCRA should be doing.
Yeah,
Should be
exactly,
Helping the
exactly.
people
Yeah,
in
yeah,
Arizona
yeah,
benefit
yeah,
from the
yeah,
discussion that took
exactly,
place in
yeah.
Connecticut. This is exactly why we exist. And that's a deliverable, if we can
Okay.
manage to do that. And certainly Lifeline is one avenue through which
Okay.
this can happen. And that's a very good deliverable. I'm not against deliverables. I think we want to serve people. I do feel some hesitation sometimes when I hear board members saying, what are people getting for their $20?
Yeah.
When I spend $20, I expect half a meal, half a seat at a concert. What can you buy for $20? Almost nothing. And yet we're expecting ourselves for $20 to deliver things to people as if they were buying something. I rather think we're enlisting their support for a cause. I don't, you know, that this is a cause in which they have an interest. It's like asking, what is the deliverable you get for your contribution to Amnesty International? Who would ask that question? Well, we're not Amnesty, I mean, we're not oppressed the way the people that Amnesty International serves, but we're doing a kind of same kind of thing. We're trying to protect people's rights. And to talk about deliverables, you know, is okay. I'm not going to object to it. But we're doing something more than doing deliverables. We're enlisting people in an important cause, and it's worth much more than $20. That cause is worth much more than $20 a year. $20 a year is nothing, and especially for our constituency, it's chicken feed. Anyway.
I think that the deliverables help underscore the commitment and serving your objective of winning support for a cause.
Good. I don't want to foreclose discussion, but I want to move on to the next thing if people are ready. I realize it's been a long
But
meeting.
what time do we need to leave to be sure that we're there before?
We should be wrapping up in 10 minutes. So the next thing I have is model laws. Can we do that in 10 minutes, do you think, Jack?
We can try.
Okay.
I think we can.
Are you ready to move on to model laws? Okay. I sense a little bit of a...
I think we're all getting ready to eat.
Right, okay. You go ahead, Jack. We have 10 minutes.
So obviously we could,
Right.
but anyway. The Bill of Rights is populous.
Right.
And residents on boards is really populous. People say, oh yeah, I want that. The model laws are a little different. They're a little more technical. If you think about the table of cash values in a life insurance policy, most people don't know how that cash value table was ever derived, but it's derived through model laws. So getting them, you have to build momentum, and that takes time, slowly. I think most residents do recognize that there's merit in the model laws, particularly in the bankruptcy protection, in the idea that their entry fees will be stewarded by responsible principles, and by the fact that contracts can be made understandable, which is something that hasn't taken place. To do it, the most logical place is the National Association of Insurance Commissioners, and as its title suggests, the members are the insurance commissioners of the 50 states plus the District of Columbia and 5 territorial jurisdictions. So there are 56 members of the NAIC, and you have to find 1 or 2 of them to champion this as an enterprise. We're making some headway. We're, I was sharing with Dan before the meeting that there's some movement in California. I know that Walt has made some movement in North Carolina. And so, in Virginia, there was some interest in that direction, but it never materialized because Virginia is its own animal, and VANA, is that what you call it? VANA, never saw a resident they respected. They think we're all over the hill and senile and to be cared for, and their task is to care for these unruly, unhelpful old people, and heaven forbid. And I think they probably feel a little threatened because there are residents who do have intelligence and do ask good questions, and they don't have answers. So I think this is just something We've tried to involve the providers. We've gone to Leading Age persistently, beginning on a meeting on May 18th, 2010. That's now nearly, over 4 years ago. That's where we first brought this idea up with Leading Age. They have so far managed to cubbyhole us, kick it down the street. We'll discuss it at the Peak Conference in February, and then maybe we'll talk to you again a year after that. But we're trying, and I think we're beginning to get some attention, and I think over time it'll develop. That's all we can do, and that's what's going on. Now, Walt Boyer did a great deal to advance this. He gave multiple talks on them. He's mastered the technicalities of it. He's a nuclear physicist. He understands these things. Gerard Hyland, I think, has an electrical engineering background. He should have the mathematical skills to master what's involved. And I think eventually they won't be able to pigeonhole us and still ignore us. They're going to have to rise and manage these communities in a responsible way.
Dan, Walt has a wonderful PowerPoint. I lifted several of the slides and used them at Fraser Meadows, used them at the Barrington and Carmel. They were very responsive. It whets and builds the momentum because it was done in the average resident who cares begins to understand what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. And so if you contact my friend Walt, he will resource you by computer with some slides for your presentation.
And his presentation, two of his presentations are on NaCCRA.
There you go.
Yeah. I saw George and then a little bit of Joe.
In Virginia, beginning about 3 years ago, I started going down and seeing one or two senators who we were approaching with regard to resident representation on boards. And we made some progress. There was an insurance committee in the Senate and another committee that both sort of focus on CCRCs, sort of. And he held several sessions. There were several committee sessions, and we got to speak. Some management people got to speak as well, including VANHA's, the State Manager Association. Their lawyers, sort of a young, middle-aged-ish woman who is very bright, determined that we are, there's a conflict of interest if any of us are on the board. In any event, we went through several meetings. 2 years ago, heavens to Betsy, 2.5, there was a subcommittee set up that was to look into this general matter of CCRCs, representation being part of it, bankruptcy being another. And we had several sessions. And then, as I say, 2.5 years ago, the subcommittee called for a study of what kind of provisions do the CCRCs in Virginia have with regard to residents and this sort of thing. And that study was to be then the basis of some more work with this committee. It has never taken place. Well, it's starting to, allegedly. When I saw, I see the senator maybe about every 6 months. When I saw him last January to be able to report back to VACRA what was going on, he said, well, there had been great confusion that the insurance committee had felt that the management, VANHA group, was going to do the study, and the VANHA group thought that the insurance group was going to do the study, so nothing happened. But then they finally realized that, and then now the study was underway. Well, hell's bells, I saw him about 3 weeks ago, preparatory for another VANHA meeting, and he had the same thing to say. But hopefully in another few months that they'll have the study and then we'll have a meeting and see what happens. But I raise this because, now why the hell did I bring it?
Our
Oh,
elderly.
I'm sorry, because this business of the guidelines that NaCCRA has come up with for CCRCs, fantastic, proposed legislation. That will be useful for us to talk with our management. We've talked with our management about these things a little bit. We started 6 months ago. But the summarized talking points or basic points on CCRCs and what they should be doing, absolutely vital for discussion with the legislature and with prospective members and things like that. Because the trouble with legislation is that language can be so complex, prepared by lawyers, that reasonable, honest, unenlightened people like me can't figure out what the hell it says. So that's why the summarized session is so important. But we really look forward to pushing that in Virginia. We may revise a little bit of it to face what comes up in Virginia. This idea of 20% resident representation on the board of directors, if it's still there, strikes me as something that's grasping far too high in reality and may turn people off rather than encourage people on. But that they really are very helpful, both versions, because we need to come up with proposed legislation for Virginia to fill a gap, a big one.
George, let me just add one quick thing to what you've said. We proposed a panel on this very topic with Catherine Pearson, Dan Seeger, myself, and Lynn O'Connor, who's your CEO. And Leading Age turned that panel down. They refused to allow that to be on the program of Leading Age.
Not too bad.
So Leading Age is both our friend and our silencer. And you've got to realize that.
Not too bad.
Friends, I don't want to, if there's more discussion about the model laws, I propose we take it up after dinner, although I
think we're
suspect
done.
we may have pretty much finished it. So why don't we assume that we're going to adjourn now temporarily for dinner. It's now 20 to 6, the time we said we'd adjourn. We're going to get ourselves down to the very good restaurant downstairs in 5 minutes so that we beat the rush. And we'll come back here at 7. We'll resume business at 7 o'clock sharp.
Dan, I'm just going to take a minute to say this, and I want to say it now because to put it in context of the remarks that George said. This is anecdotal, but at Seabury we have a men's coffee mug gathering every Saturday morning to solve all the problems in the world. And the work that Walt has done and his committee is much admired. But if we think all of that is going to pay off quickly at any time in the near future, we're being foolish. It ain't going to happen because in this era of skepticism about government being able to function effectively and deal with problems, the standoff that goes off in Washington. And in that meeting I attended Friday, the gentleman that was appointed by the commissioner to represent the Department of Social Services in dealings with the advisory committee, that meeting went on for 2.5 hours. 1 hour of that meeting was taken up by convincing this guy that he was wrong when he insisted that there's no financial risk associated with becoming a member of a CCRC. It turned out that he didn't understand the difference between a Type A and Type B, Type C contract.
And he's been working it.
That is a measure of the extraordinary challenge. You know, if we want to do something that has visibility, that gets somebody wild up and say, hey, it's worth it to spend $20, we can't count a lot on those model laws, as good as they are.
Let that be the last word.
give
Yeah.
you the last word on this topic right now, and we'll come back at 7 o'clock sharp and resume. Thank you all.